China for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation. Mr. President, we thank Mr. Mladenov for his thorough briefing on the situation in the Middle East and the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and the status of Palestinian and Israeli relations. And what the Special Coordinator said clearly indicates that in the Middle East peace process, negative trends are dominating. A logic of violence is at work, the victims of which are the civilian population. The latest events confirm the fragility and the explosiveness of the situation. We find absolutely unacceptable the launch of rockets from Gaza against Israeli towns, as a result of which civilians are dying. We condemn all manifestations of terrorism and indiscriminate strikes. We call upon all sides to refrain from the use of force and unilateral steps, including illegal settlement activity and provocative rhetoric. Today, when the region of the Middle East and North Africa remains riven, shaken by acute conflicts in Syria, Yemen, Libya, the lack of progress in the resolution of the central problem, the Palestinian question, is of the most serious concern. The continued status quo is not viable. We cannot simply put up with that state of affairs. There is an alternative to it. It lies in ramping up collective efforts to relaunch the negotiating process, aimed at the realization of the two-state solution for a settlement involving two states, Palestine and Israel, coexisting in peace and security within internationally recognized borders. There is an acute issue on the agenda, enlivening channels of dialogue, and we call upon Palestinians and Israelis to adopt a logic of a negotiating process, which would be based on universally recognized international legal basis, including the corresponding resolutions of the UN Security Council, the Madrid Principles, including Land for Peace, the Arab Peace Initiative, the roadmap of the Middle East Quartet of International Mediators. And the Quartet report of 2016 remains relevant. It clearly outlines steps that need to be taken to overcome negative trends which dominate in the Middle East settlement. Any viable plans to achieve a comprehensive Middle East settlement must use as a starting point these multilateral decisions and take into account the opinion of the Arab world, which was reflected in the Arab Peace Initiative, which was adopted at the Arab League Summit in 2002. This is the precondition for the effectiveness and performance and results that will stem from any peace project. Russia will continue steps to restore a positive momentum and a positive agenda in the Palestinian and Israeli file. The proposal to hold a summit in Russia between the leaders of Palestine and Israel remains on the table. We believe the role of regional players is important, in particular Egypt and Jordan. It is our view that the latest inter-Palestinian meeting in Moscow in February of this year was a contribution to the efforts being made to overcome division in the Palestinian ranks. Once again, we underscore that any international and regional steps in inter-Palestinian reconciliation will only have an effect if they are undertaken in coordination with the legitimate administration of the State of Palestine led by President Abbas. We believe it necessary to ensure the full operation of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. This is an extremely important mechanism for easing the lot of Palestinian refugees in the Middle East. As a result of wars and conflicts, it was forced to leave the area in which it was, people who have been forced to leave the areas where they lived. And Russia, for its part, will continue to help Palestinians through its contributions to the UNRWA budget and on a bilateral basis. We believe that the agency must continue to be a most important and effective mechanism for providing assistance to Palestinian refugees before, during, and once a lasting solution to the refugee problem has been found. Any other path to alleviating the refugee situation, the situation of refugees and those countries concerned, is simply not something we can envisage. Mr. President, history shows that only through a negotiated settlement can one guarantee a lasting nature of any potential agreement. And so now all efforts must be focused on relaunching political dialogue between Palestinians and Israelis, within the framework of which a solution to the comprehensive and complex final status question will be sought, including the status of Jerusalem, refugees, borders, and also fundamental aspects of security. The principle of multilateralism and mutually respectful, compromise-focused dialogue, the search for compromise solutions, must become the paradigm for finding solutions to the problems between the Arab world and Israel. Unilateral steps, such as the recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, do not change the status of these territories, which is determined by the pertinent resolutions of the Council. The status of these territories is the subject of direct Syrian and Israeli dialogue, which took place in very recent history. Such an approach is determined and clearly set out by the UN Secretary-General and the overwhelming majority of states of the world, and it fully corresponds to the resolutions of the Security Council that we adopted here in this room by consensus. Mr. President, there is no doubt that in its isolation, nobody will be able to solve the Middle East peace process problem alone. Individual efforts need to be pooled. Only a broad, inclusive international coalition will be able to overcome the threat of terrorism. Only through active international cooperation will, based on a common rule book, will it be possible to resolve the many regional conflicts, including the Palestinian and Israeli one. And we call upon all to engage in that interaction and cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Je remercie
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation